Hey FM kids, my name is David Schulte and I typically teach in the 4th and 5th grade class. And I have the opportunity to be able to talk about Joseph today. As you've heard, he's one of 10 brothers and he was given a fancy coat, which probably wouldn't have meant much, but what ended up happening was it created some jealousy amongst his other brothers. And they pretended to be able to have him killed or to die, but he didn't. He was taken into slavery into Egypt, which what that means is he was in Egypt and he was told what to do all the time. And the amazing part about this story is Joseph actually became basically the president of Egypt. We'll call him the governor. And God told him that there would be no food left in 5 years. So what his family did back home is his dad was so sad to hear that Joseph wasn't around. And amongst this time where everyone was so hungry, they were all looking at each other, and his dad said, "Hey, stop staring at each other and go down to Egypt and get some food." So he sends 9 of the 10 brothers, and this is where our story begins. When he sent 9 of the 10 brothers, he kept the youngest, and his name was Benjamin. And he had lost Joseph, who was the youngest at the time, and he did not want to lose anyone else, none of his kids. So he kept him behind and sent the other 9. And when the 9 got to Egypt, they got to see Joseph, who they thought was gone. They thought that he was long gone. They took care of him. They didn't have any more jealousy of his cool jacket. That was all ripped up and torn, and they thought he was gone. So when they see him, they didn't see him as they had seen him before. 15 years had passed by this point. So as you see me here, maybe he had some cool glasses because he was rich. Or maybe his face was a little strange and they couldn't quite see everything, so maybe he had a little beanie and he was kind of in disguise. We don't know. But what we do know is that Joseph didn't give them any hints at all that he was their brother. So when they came to him, he didn't look like he did 15 years before. He was older. He had some makeup on, which means like his face looked different. And he told him, "Okay, you want to buy some grain or some food? I'll give it to you. I'll give you the food. I'll give it to you and you go back home. But if you want any more food, you're going to have to keep your brother here with me, and you got to bring back your youngest brother because I want to see him." So they were nervous about that because the last thing they wanted was to be able to bring Benjamin back because his dad was already scared to lose him. And now the head, or one of the head people of Egypt, which was his brother and they didn't know, is telling them to go and get him and bring him back if they want more food. So they leave. And they leave one of their brothers behind. And when they go back home, and they take as long as they can with the food that was given to them, and then they have to go back. They don't have a choice. They're out of food, and it's like super hot out. There's nothing to be found, and they go back. So this time they bring Benjamin, the youngest brother. And when they bring him back, his dad was having a whole bunch of feelings. You can imagine just sending one of your kids out after losing one. You would think maybe he's scared. Maybe he's like, "Oh man, I'm not going to be able to see him again." So he went back anyways with Benjamin, all the brothers this time, all 10 of them. And when he comes back, Joseph still got a front. He's like, "I'm not going to give him any more hints, you know. I'm still mad at them. They put me in prison. They acted like I was gone, I had died. And now they're coming to me for more food, and they brought Benjamin." So he looks at them and he starts to talk with them. "Hey, how's your dad?" And he's asking him different questions. And all of a sudden he just breaks down. he just starts crying. This is Joseph. The head of Egypt just starts wailing. Ah! And everyone that was in the room was shocked. They didn't know what was going on. So he sends everybody out of the room except his brothers. He says, get out of here, And all the people that were his servants were like, I don't know what's happening. He's just crying, and they said wailing, just pure sadness. And when they go, he says, I'm Joseph. I'm the one you threw into slavery. And what do you think the brothers did? They didn't say a word. They were just blown away. They're just shocked. So they're staring at him. And this is one of my favorite lines from the story. And this is in Genesis 45, verse 8. It says, and this is Joseph speaking to his brothers. It says to him, so now it was not you who sent me here, but God. And he has made me a father to Pharaoh and lord of all his house and a ruler throughout all the land of Egypt. So he went from just mad at his brothers and trying to be able to test them, to be able to see, do they still have that evil heart that maybe they wouldn't, maybe they would try to get me in trouble, or they would try to just ignore me like they did before. But his heart completely changed. His mind and his thoughts changed, and he said, you know what? You weren't the ones who sent me here. God did this so that he could use me to save you, all of my family, and all of Egypt and everyone around. And because of what the hardship that he had, God had used him to be able to save people and to care for others. So at this point, the brothers are still just blown away, and then they all start crying together. They're just a family again. It's like a big family reunion. I don't know if you've had a family reunion, but I had one about, I would say 10 years ago. And it was on a giant farm. And all my family got together, and we all got to be able to see each other. And my family's not close by. It's thousands of miles away. And we all got together in one spot, and it was just so special. So when I think about this story, maybe you could think about the story too. What was the time that you got together with your family and felt the way they did? Just maybe not crying and so emotional, but maybe you just were excited to see one another. Maybe during this time where you don't get to see as many friends, you are looking forward to the day maybe you will have a reunion with your friends again, or with some family members that are living further away. But they got this. And this was after 15 years of not seeing them. So he came in, and they're all crying together, and he says, I want to see my dad. I haven't seen him. Go back. I'm going to give you all the money that you use to be able to buy food. I'm going to give you so much food. He just stacking the food on him. He gave him maybe Pop-Tarts. Maybe he gave him just tons of cereal to the point that he's having to carry it all over. And they're just trying to carry it around, and they got all these different animals carrying this food. And they bring it back to their dad. And the dad, the first time they came back, was like, no, I don't believe it, But now he's like, this has to be my son. And he gets up and he tries to go far as he can to Egypt, and he's an older guy. And he's like, send some people and tell Joseph I'm here in the city close by. And Joseph comes to him, and his father is just so excited. He hadn't seen him in 15 years. He thought he had died. He thought he was gone forever, and now he's here with them. And when I think about the feelings that he must have had just being able to see his son after so long, it's such a happy feeling, and I hope that you get to experience a family reunion like that, because God can use all situations for the good. And to close things up, to be able to have a few takeaways from our message today, first thing I want to be able to say is that even when things are sad and hard in our life, God can turn things around to be able to make it for the good. I know there's a lot of things happening around us day to day, and there's a lot of changes, and sometimes we might look at it as like, oh, it's just not good right now. And there are things that aren't as good, but God can use that in incredible ways, just like he did in Joseph's life, where he was thrown out of his family, he was able to become the savior of the family. He was able to save them from being able to not have any food. And God's love was able to just work through Joseph and to be able to change his outlook from being angry at his family to loving them again. And what that came with was the idea of forgiveness. Forgiveness is what really changed his heart and his mind to be able to look at his brothers in a way, not saying like, I want to get them back for what they did. But instead, he was able to look at them and say, you know what? God has shown me so much love. And just like the message or the passage I read to you, God used me for that time. God put me there. So even though it looked bad, God used it to be able to help my family and to be able to help all the people in Egypt and all around. So we have the idea of forgiveness leads to be able to have more love for those even we don't like or maybe are angry with. We have the idea that even when things are sad or they don't look good, God is in full control and he can use that for the good. And I think last of all is God sees us. When Joseph was in prison, when he was, being thrown into a ditch and completely separated from his family, when so many things that happened to him did not look good, he stayed faithful. He believed in God that he would be able to keep going and to be able to know that God was going to use it for the good. And that's what happened. God saw that he was hurting, and God sees when we're hurting, and he is never going to leave us. So as we go about the rest of our week, I hope that you feel God's presence in a special way and that you are able to know that we love you and we miss you. Thanks for listening today.